Welcome to a play-by-play review. I'm your host Henry, and I would like to wish an early happy Thanksgiving to everyone, as Thanksgiving is going to be in a couple days. Week 12 in the NFL is over, and it is the last of the bye weeks. Washington, Denver, and the Los Angeles Chargers were all on the bye this week. After this, it will be back to a full slate of 16 games. No one's going to be on the bye, and it's going to be that 4 or 5 weeks sprint kind to the finish where the playoff picture is definitely getting set. We've already had one elimination so far. We'll get to that in a little bit. Though there's no one who is guaranteed in at the moment, but there's definitely some that are looking to be almost certainly playoff contenders more than others. There are a lot of close games this week. It was a pretty entertaining week overall. It's one where more often than not, when there are no normal games, there's always something fishy going on with one or two of these games. So we'll start with the Thursday night game, as per usual. This was the Buffalo Bills going into Houston to take on the Texans. And the Bills having a good season record-wise. They were 7-3 going into this game, but there are definitely parts where it's they're a little bit iffy. Obviously, they lost two divisional games earlier in the season against New England and Miami. The Miami one was the big shocker, but still plenty of optimism. And going into Houston, where the Texans they were 5-5 and were definitely having an up and down season. This is also one where C.J. Stroud was still not starting again because of his, I believe, concussion. I actually don't remember off the top of my head what his injury is, but either way, this is another start for Davis Mills. And this was a weird one to start because Keon Coleman, the Bills' second-round wide receiver from last year, was a healthy scratch again. I think he was a healthy scratch last week, and it's been some weird behind-the-scenes stuff where it's he's not attending meetings or something, or I don't know what's going on there, but either way, it's no Keon Coleman again for the Bills, and it was a slow start, to say the least. Pretty defensive. It makes sense given that Houston's starting their backup quarterback, but the Bills were having a rough time getting started on offense. Josh Allen looked to get injured early on, but he came back and he was okay, but there was a tackle where he got hit from behind on a run, and he went down, and it looked like he might have been seriously hurt, but he was only out for, I don't even know if he went out, because I think it was on a third down run, and he didn't get it, so they punted, and then he came back in the next series, but it was definitely a little bit of a scare. This was also definitely not Josh Allen's best game, just period. He threw for 253 yards, but did not throw for a single touchdown, and threw 2 interceptions. James Cook had a decent enough game. He burst out for a 50-yard touchdown run. So that's why he had finished with 116 yards and 1 touchdown. But most of that came on the 1 touchdown run. So it's yards per carry wise, it's a little skewed essentially because of that 1 touchdown. You take that out and it wasn't a great game. The big takeaway for the Bills on the offense side of the ball is that they gave up 8 sacks to against this. The Texans defense is number 1 in the league, I'm pretty sure, but still, it was one of if not the largest amount of sacks given up by the Bills while Josh Allen was starting, and it was he was just having a miserable day. You could tell the whole time he was. He just did not have a lot of time to throw. He did not look comfortable in the pocket. He was not making very many good throws either. And it's the reason why Buffalo only scored 1 offensive touchdown, is because they just could not get really anything going on offense. Houston's defense was just playing out of their minds this game. It was very, very impressive. On the flip side, Texans offense still definitely has its issues. I'm not going to hold this game against them completely, because again, it's Davis Mills starting, not C.J. Stroud, but their short yardage situation, or play calling especially, is generationally bad. And it's been this, I feel for the whole season, where they get to 3rd and 1 or 1st and goal, even, especially goal to go situations. They really, really struggle because they don't have a good power back at the moment, and their offensive line still isn't very good. So they just don't have an ability to, like churn out 2 to 3 yard runs in like a obvious running situation. And because of that, teams can focus a bit more on the pass and defend it well. So they like this is another game where Texans just really struggled from the goal line. I know Joe Mixon, their running back that they signed last offseason, had a good season, and he's been dealing with some mystery injury that's kept him out all season. But it's like they never put him on IR, but they like never declared him back, or like he's never practicing. It was another odd situation, but news came out that he is not going to be playing the season at all. I think they put him on IR now because whatever injury has been nagging him is going to keep him out for the rest of the season, which is unfortunate to see, but it will probably mean more Woody Marks, who I assume is probably going to take over the starting running back role. I think he already kind of has. Like they're phasing him in more to the starting role over Nick Chubb now. Other injury news in this game specifically, there's like multiple Bills defenders were getting injured. Terrell Bernard and Maxwell Hairston both went down. Bernard had like a broken arm or something like that, or like a sprained shoulder. He was in a sling, I remember, after getting injured in the game. Maxwell Hairston went down, I think, with a concussion. And so a Bills defense that's already starting to thin again on the defensive side of the ball, which feels like that happens every year, is getting thin once more. So it's just overall, it was, despite it being a close score, the Texans were definitely outplaying the Bills in this game, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So moving on to the 1 o'clock games, we'll start with the big one here. The Indianapolis Colts going into Kansas City to take on the Chiefs. The Chiefs were 5-5 going into this matchup. Colts were 8-2. So this was going in. It was basically like a must-win game for the Chiefs because they were out. They still are actually, I think, out of playoff contention. And if they had lost the game, they would only have like a 20-something% chance to get in. Whereas if they won, which they did in overtime, 23-20, they're at like a 50-some% chance of winning. Like it's still, they're on the outside looking in, but they have a much better chance now compared to what they did going into this week. And for the Colts, this was one where a lot of eyes are on it, and the Colts playing really well this season, but there's definitely plenty of skeptics just given that they're like a rise just out of nowhere. So this was one like, are they legit? Can they compete with the Chiefs, who have they've been the class of the AFC East for the past 5 years or so? And I mean, they took them to overtime, and it was one where early on it looked like the Colts were just handling business pretty well. They were up 20-9 going into the fourth quarter, and it seemed like they were like just completely stuffing out the Chiefs. I mean, the offense wasn't playing up to its usual standards. The Chiefs were doing a very good job at defending Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor had one of, if not his quietest game of the season. And to make up for it, the Colts passing offense it wasn't great, but it was doing enough for like the first half at least, where they were in contention still and they were keeping the lead up. But then they just kind of, I don't even really know what happened. It just kind of shut down in the second half. Like Tyler Warren was barely a factor in this game. Really just like everyone on the Colts offense was just having a down week. So credit the Chiefs defense. They played a very good game. I know there's like ref ball in this game going both ways. There's like a touchdown called back for a Travis Kelce touchdown called back due to like a pretty ticky-tacky offensive pass interference call. But it was one where the Chiefs played well enough where they just kind of hung around and didn't let the game escape them, and then were able to get enough going. Kareem Hunt had a very good game. He rushed for over 100 yards and had a touchdown. Mahomes it took him a little bit to get going. He threw an interception in this game, but it was definitely later on he was really starting to look more like the Mahomes we're used to. He found Rashee Rice a lot in this game. Rashee Rice had 141 yards, and you could definitely tell that the Chiefs offense was wearing down the Colts defense as this game went on. And eventually the Colts play calling wasn't the best. They were really trying to get Jonathan Taylor going in overtime, and it just was not working at all. They got stuffed on a 3rd and 1 where they ran the ball with Jonathan Taylor, and he lost a couple of yards. And it's just one where we've kind of seen all season that this offense runs through Jonathan Taylor, and if you stop him, it's stuff like this happens. The Colts just offensively don't seem to have a good way of matching up when Jonathan Taylor is stuffed, and they're forced into just constantly passing the ball. So for the Chiefs here, this is a huge win for them. It certainly wasn't the prettiest win, but it's definitely one where they look a lot better than they probably have been in the past. They had been 0-5 in one-score games going into this week, and that was a flip, like complete opposite from last year where they went 11-0 in one-score games. So this is their first win, and I don't know if it's going to net into like a big run here because I think the Chiefs play the Bears. I don't remember what day it is of the week in Week 13, but I know the Chiefs. I think it might be on Thanksgiving Day, but I'm not 100% sure. But I know the Chiefs and the Bears do play, and that's going to be big because the Bears are playing really well, overall playing really well, even if like watching the games, they don't always seem to wow you. But the Bears have a really good record, and so that's going to be a really good game next week. But that's getting ahead of myself here. Either way, this is for the Chiefs. It's a really nice win for them, and they're starting to look more like they usually do. Their defense looked a lot better than it has, and Mahomes started to look more like the Mahomes we're used to. And if they can get Kareem Hunt going and the run game going, because they have struggled with that all season, this could be a pretty dangerous Chiefs team going down this last stretch of 5 or 6 games. So after that, we're going to go, speaking of the Bears, actually, going to go to them. So they played host to Pittsburgh, and it was people weren't quite sure if Aaron Rodgers was going to start this week because of his wrist injury that he was dealing with. It wound up not being the case, so we got a Mason Rudolph start. And it was a back and forth game, I would say. The Bears were missing a lot of players on defense. Like they're basically missing all of their starting linebackers and multiple starting cornerbacks. So the Bears defense was missing a lot of aspects for that defense, and yet they did just well enough to hold on to the victory. Bears won 31-28 in pretty back and forth game overall. It was a little sloppy, I'd say, but overall it was pretty solid. Caleb Williams had a pretty good game, 239 yards and 3 touchdowns. There's definitely some lapses in the Pittsburgh defense over the course of this game. Neither run game, it felt like, could really get going. Like Jaylen Warren was basically just a non-factor. Kenneth Gainwell actually kind of overtook him in the running back category for the Steelers, but even then it was like he played okay, but not the best. And Mason Rudolph and the Pittsburgh offense, it was okay. It didn't do enough, but it wasn't like horrible. DK Metcalf also got banged up a little bit in this game, but overall it was just one where the Steelers just didn't seem to be able to do enough this game, which is worrying given the state of the Chicago defense, given the injuries. And I got that the Steelers were also starting their backup quarterback, but it was they just don't have too many threats in the passing attack. And I know a lot of Steelers fans are pretty grumpy at the moment with how George Pickens is playing in Dallas because there's a stat where after this week, Pickens was basically 23 yards or had 23 less or something like, I don't know if it was actually 23, but it was like Pickens had like 1,045 receiving yards after week 12, and the entire Steelers wide receiver core had like 1,050 or something like that. Like it was really close for their entire wide receiver core compared to just one guy. So I know a lot of Steelers fans are having buyer's remorse, or I guess seller's remorse when it comes to trading away George Pickens. But I don't know if George Pickens would still be, performing as well in Pittsburgh as he is in Dallas, but it's just one of the ones where in hindsight it doesn't look good. But even then, I don't really want to say that Pickens would be playing as well as he was, but it's still not a great look overall for a passing attack that is really struggling to see a guy they traded away, a good receiver they traded away to be exceeding expectations over in Dallas. So the Steelers are 6-5. They've actually lost the top of the division to Baltimore at this point. We'll get to Baltimore in a little bit, but I think they're tied record wise with the Ravens, but I think the Ravens hold tiebreaker over them at the moment. So this is a kind of, I wouldn't say expected, but not super surprising, to be honest, for the Steelers, just given how their season, like, they just don't seem to have enough talent, especially on the offensive side of the ball, to really elevate them. And I mean, at this rate, they're definitely looking like they're going 9-8 because they seem to embody just mediocrity because they can play well enough and they certainly have talent, but they don't always seem to be able to string it together, especially against better teams. And the Bears right now, even if not all their wins are pretty, they're playing really well. Their defense especially is playing insanely well in the turnover category. Like, they got another interception. I think I forget if it was one or two, but they got at least one interception this game. And they're a very opportunistic defense, and they are. It's a team that certainly has plenty of question marks, but is one that I could certainly see making some noise in the playoffs, because I think at this rate they're definitely going to make the playoffs with how the Bears are playing, barring some monumental collapse, which I just don't see in the cards at the moment. But I'm not ready to crown them like Super Bowl favorites or anything like that, just because I don't think they have enough experience at the moment. And that a lot of the times they, like, especially on the offensive side of the ball, their offense can like just randomly shut down at times. But overall, it's a team that I think is playing good football. Now, next up, we'll go to the Patriots and the Bengals. So going to another unfortunate AFC North team in the Bengals. So this is another Joe Flacco start. No not James Conner, Jamar Chase. I don't know why. I looked out of my notes, saw Jamar Chase, and saw the JC emphasized, and just my mind for some reason went to James Conner instead. But yeah, no Jamar Chase in this game because of the spitting incident he had with Jalen Ramsey last week. His suspension was upheld, so the Bengals are already down Joe Burrow. We're now down Jamar Chase, and it was one where the Bengals played better than expected. The Patriots did not play their best game in the slightest. Drake May had, all things considered, a pretty okay at best performance. He definitely turned it on in the second half, it felt like, but to start, it was pretty rough. Travion Henderson didn't have his best game. Chase Brown actually had a pretty solid game overall, which is surprising given that A, the Bengals and Chase Brown have not had a good season rushing the ball, and B, the Patriots have been one of the best teams at defending the run. Chase Brown went for 107 yards rushing, and that was actually the most the Patriots had given up all season to a running back. Unfortunately for the Bengals, their passing attack just could not get it done. They're also dealt with multiple injuries this game. Andre Yosuvash and T. Higgins got injured in this game. Flacco also got injured for a little bit, but he came back to finish the game. But T. Higgins went down with a pretty rough-looking concussion, where I think he tried to high point the ball and landed in a pretty awkward way on his head. I'm assuming he's going to be out for a little bit, so hopefully he's okay. But it was just one where the Bengals you could tell the injuries were getting there, and their defense, while I think it was missing Trey Hendricks in this game, I don't remember, but I think it was. They played better than they normally do, but they just couldn't quite hang with the Patriots, in the end. So it was one where Patriots are 10-2. They won ugly this game. Not everything's going to be a comfortable win, and these kind of ugly wins where you don't play your best, you just take the wins where you can get them. And yeah, I mean, they're 10-2. Drake May's looking good overall. I'm confident in the Patriots, but I need to see a little bit more against high end teams before I can really say they're going to the Super Bowl. But right now, overall they're looking pretty good. For the Bengals, Yeah, there's not many silver linings I can really take out of this other than the defense didn't play horrible. Joe Burrow is coming back. Looks to be this coming week. I think they play Thursday, but I actually don't remember off the top of my head. But it is like Joe Burrow has said he's back. He's been practicing. It's looking like if not this week, then definitely next week. But I think it is going to be week 13 that he is going to be coming back and playing. I think I don't think the Bengals are making the playoffs because they are 3-8 at the moment. But I mean, it's always nice to see Joe Burrow back and playing. But I mean, the season I think at this point is lost. So it's you just kind of just try and look for silver linings when you can, essentially, because there aren't too many at the moment, unfortunately. So now we're going to go to the Ravens to cover another AFC East versus AFC North matchup. And so I always find it weird that the Ravens are in the AFC North, the North, despite being on the East Coast. But yeah, anyway, that's product of I know it's because they used to be the Cleveland Browns, and Cleveland's obviously a lot more north than Baltimore is. But anyway, it's whatever. So the Ravens played host to the New York Jets, and yeah, this is just a really ugly, boring game. The Ravens won 23-10 in a outcome that was not really all that surprising. Lamar Jackson was pretty quiet this game. The Jets defense held him in check, but they were kind of struggling against Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry only ran for 64 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's where the 2 came from. But it was like when they needed him, usually like goal line situations and stuff like that, Derrick Henry was kind of unstoppable. Tyrod Taylor got to start this game because the Jets benched Justin Fields again. This time there's no injury to prevent the restart of Justin Fields. And I mean, Tyrod Taylor was okay. Certainly wasn't great, but I mean, he threw 222 yards and a touchdown, but you could just tell this Jets offense just needs a lot of work because they were just couldn't get much done. The Ravens defense has been playing significantly better over the past few weeks. Kind of like this defense compared to what it was at like in the first few weeks is completely different. The Ravens were also missing Rashad Bateman going in this game, I think, due to injury, but didn't really matter too much. I mean, the Ravens passing attack certainly wasn't lighting the world on fire, but I mean, the Jets defense certainly has plenty of players, like playmakers, even if they traded away a few. But it's overall just wasn't. It was okay. It's just I'm struggling to find ways to describe a pretty uninteresting game overall. It was just pretty sloppy and pretty boring. I had a friend who went to the game and he was like, "Yeah, I took my girlfriend here, and this is the first ever game she'd been to in person." And after the first quarter, I was like, "I promise you, games are better than this. Like, this is not the state of every NFL game." And I'm watching the game at home, like, yeah, there could be better games on or going on right now, and there were better games going on at the moment. Speaking of a game that is could have been better, definitely was. It started off rough, but it got interesting a little bit. The Seattle Seahawks going into Tennessee to take on the Titans. Titans obviously only have 1 win on the season, and even then it was like a game they probably should have lost because again that was against the Cardinals, and that was the Amari DiMercato fumble, where he pulls the Deshaun Jackson. But anyway, they won the game, and it's been a rough ride for the Titans this season compared to the Seahawks, who are having a pretty good season overall. This was a game where Seahawks win 30-24, but don't let the final score fool you. It was pretty Seahawks were pretty dominant in this whole game. The Titans scored 21 points in the second half to at least make it a game, but overall it was one where the usual Seahawks showed up, mainly in Jackson Smith-Njigba having once again an insane game. 8 catches, 167 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So he's already broken the Seahawks single season franchise record for reception yards. He's like he's over 1,300 at this point. He passed DK Metcalf's 2020 record, and he still has what 5 games to go. I think 5 or 6 games to go left in the season for him to, you know, at this point he's chasing that 2,000 yard marker because no receiver has ever hit 2,000 yards. I think Cooper Kupp holds the most. Like he got, I forget if he got into 1,900 or 1,800 yards, but either way, it was Cooper Kupp back in 2021 got the closest. And I don't know if Smith and Jigba is going to get there because 2,000 yards is a lot, and he still needs like 700 or like 650. But I mean, there's a chance. There's certainly a chance. Elsewhere in this game, Cam Ward, he threw a lot, got sacked a lot, definitely made some fun plays. It's the kind of performance really this whole season where it's like there's a lot of growing pains, and overall it's probably more bad than good, but it's enjoyable to watch. Like you can see that Cam Ward certainly has plenty of talent, and there are certainly moments where like you can tell this guy deserved to be like a top draft choice. Like he can really make some plays both with his arm and his leg. He still is going through some growing pains, and he has a really bad team around him. Like he has no receivers anymore. They're like all gone, regressed, or injured. His offensive line is terrible, and he doesn't have much of a run game. So there's just not much going on in the offensive department for the Titans. And so it's just like for Tennessee, it's like you just kind of got to watch for improvements. And I don't think you really care if you lose at this point because you're 1-10. And somehow, like, I think they're eliminated for the playoffs. I actually don't know. But because I didn't see a thing that said they were eliminated. I have to imagine they are. Actually, they're somehow not. I don't really know how because they only have 1 win, but the math is saying they're still technically alive in the playoffs. I still don't know why, but like I don't think it's got to be in like the 0.1% kind of thing where it's like they would need to win out and like everyone else in the AFC would have to lose out or something for them to sneak into a wild card, and I don't think that's happening. But they're definitely draft watching and just kind of looking for improvements. And Cam Ward's definitely shown that he can, make some good plays out there. So yeah, I think that's the silver lining there for Tennessee. So flipping over to the NFC for an NFC divisional matchup, a pretty big one at that. Maybe not record wise, but it's an NFC North divisional matchup. Those are always pretty spicy. It was the Minnesota Vikings going into Green Bay to take on the Packers. Vikings having a pretty rough stretch. JJ McCarthy especially having a really rough stretch of games in his whole 9 persona where he's like, after the 1 win he had where he's like, I got an alternative persona that comes out during game times. He's called 9. And then they started losing and everyone started clowning on him. Everyone's going to continue clowning on 9 because the Minnesota Vikings did not even score 9 points in this game. They only scored 6. And McCarthy had a pretty bad game. Honestly, neither quarterback had a really all that good game. Jordan Love only threw for 139 yards on 14 attempts. It was really the Emmanuel Wilson show for Green Bay. Josh Jacobs had been injured and he was not playing in this game. So Emmanuel Wilson, their backup running back, took the rock, carried it 28 times for 107 yards and 2 touchdowns. He was money in goal-to-go situations. And it was one where the Green Bay defense was just completely dominant this whole game. JJ McCarthy, he was playing bad, and then he got concussed. I think he stayed in the game for at least most, if not all of it, and he probably should have been taken out because he... let me actually check the final tallies because he had a pretty abysmal game. He threw for 87 yards and 2 interceptions and was also sacked 5 times for 35 yards. So he finished with a net yardage of 52, a passer rating of 34.2, which is not good at all. It was there's been a lot of talk since this game that JJ McCarthy is a draft bust. I'm not going to go that far because he's not even played a full season yet, but he's definitely not looked good at all. Like when your stats so far in your career are being compared to like Jamarcus Russell and Paxton Lynch, that's not a good thing at all for a quarterback because both those guys were terrible. I still think there's certainly a chance McCarthy can turn it around, but he's also been the one where he's had like coming out of college, he definitely seemed to have the least amount of like tape put or like tape he's shown where like he's had the most wow factor. Like even in the national championship game he won, he only threw the ball like 8 times I think. So he was never like a light the world on fire type of passer in college, but even then, like it's not been good for him and the Vikings this season. I know there's been a whole thing of like Justin Jefferson's been frustrated. There hasn't been any like major blowups or anything like that, but keep an eye on that if the Vikings continue to play this poorly. For the Packers, I mean, this definitely wasn't their best game offensively, but it was a pretty like low stress game, which they've basically never had this season. And their defense looked incredible this game. So they're 7-3-1, only a half game back of the Bears at this point because of that tie they had with the Cowboys. So, and then they also get the big win over a division rival. So Packers are looking good at the moment. They're certainly pretty happy. Their offense though does need to get back on track because it's still, I'm still a little worried that their offense, like it needs a bit more. It needs some fine tuning essentially because it's certainly looked a bit rough recently. So after that, we're going to go to another NFC North team, the Detroit Lions, playing host to the New York Giants. This is another Jameis Winston start, and this was honestly probably the game of the week. It was really, really fun, which I was not expecting. I was not expecting to enjoy watching the Giants as much as I did, but I think that's kind of the Jameis Winston effect where he like at this point in his career, we know what to expect from him, and he's just kind of he's the wild and inaccurate and sometimes good, sometimes bad, but like incredibly entertaining to watch. And you can't ask much more for that, especially on a team that's 2-10 at this point in the season. The Giants did lose this game 34-27 in overtime, but it was their Giants are also eliminated from the playoffs after this loss, so they are the first team eliminated. But it was at least an enjoyable game to watch. It was very, very fun. So the Giants actually kind of got out to an early, pretty good offensive start in this game. Wan'Dale Robinson was having the performance of a lifetime in this game. The Detroit defense they were having a really bad day. Wan'Dale Robinson had 9 catches for 156 yards and a touchdown. And it just felt like every play, really every drive, Jameis Winston would find him open for like a 20-yard pass, like at least once per drive. It was kind of insane. The best play though that happened this game was I think in the third quarter where the Giants ran a trick play where there was like one of those reverse kind of throw it back to a wide receiver who would pass it. I forget exactly what the name of the play call is, but it got back to Gunnar Olszewski, who threw it to Jameis Winston, who was being covered by a linebacker, and the ball was like kind of underthrown a little bit. So Jameis Winston actually kind of stepped back, like tracked back to the ball, sort of kind of mossed the linebacker, then ran forward a little bit, re-juked the linebacker, basically stiff-armed him, and stumbled into the end zone. It was one of the craziest, most like just wild, insane, and fun plays you'll ever see. Because Jameis Winston was looking like Gronk out there with how he was playing. It was kind of it was just I was watching it live and I was losing my mind. Like I don't even care if the Giants are a division rival. It was just pure entertainment right there. That's why you watch football. The problem with the Giants though was that their defense was coached by Shane Bowen, and Shane Bowen. Well, there's a reason why he has since been fired because he did not really know what to do. mainly in how they were supposed to guard Jahmyr Gibbs, because they figured that the best way of defending Jahmyr Gibbs was to not defend Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs ran 15 times for 219 yards and 2 touchdowns. Broke off 2 long touchdown runs, including one in overtime. He also had another like 50-something yards receiving, so he finished with like over 250 scrimmage yards and 2 touchdowns. So like basically the best of the rest of Detroit's offense just didn't really need to do anything. They just kind of let Jahmyr cook, and he cooked. He had an insane game and carried the Lions to a victory because their defense was really struggling. Both defenses were really struggling in this game. In the end, the Lions won. They kept pace with the Packers and the Bears. I worry about this defense considering they did not play well in this game. I mean, their defense played well against Philly last week, but I'm going to get to the Eagles here in a little bit, and I'm getting real excited about that because, well, we'll get to that in a little bit. But I don't know. I don't know if this is a fluke for the Lions defense or a trendsetter, but they need to figure something out because giving up 27 points and a ton of yards to the Giants, the Jameis Winston Giants, is not a great look. So we'll start now with the late afternoon games. First is the Jacksonville Jaguars going into Arizona to take on the Cardinals. And this is another overtime game. There are actually 3 overtime games this week. This is the last of them. The Jags would win 27-24. And this kind of felt like the quintessential Jaguars experience where there was a lot of good, there was a lot of bad. Trevor Lawrence had a very up and down game. Like there were some throws that he made that was like, dang, this guy's really good. There's no surprise that he went first overall and had all that hype to him. And then there's other throws that he makes where it's like, why were you drafted? I'm pretty sure I said basically this exact quote before about him like last week or 2 weeks ago, but it bears repeating because he makes some really good throws and then he makes some really bad throws. He had at least one, might be 2 interceptions in this game. Let me double check. It was actually 3 interceptions this game. He also had 3 touchdowns. It was just all over the place. The Jags run game, which they had, it's clear that when they lean on it, they play well offensively. The Jags run game was not the best in this game. Travis Etienne had an okay game, like pretty solid overall, but could have been better. And the Cardinals defensively defensively they seemed to get off to a really good start. Walter Nolan had like this sort of interception, sort of fumble recovery, like basically a thick 6 essentially is what I'll say. But it was a really, really impressive play by Walter Nolan for a touchdown. And it's like, it just felt like at times it was the we're so over or we're so back type of meme for the Jags, whereas like they were there 1 minute and then they were gone the next, and then they're there, and then you get the picture. It was very quintessential Jacksonville. Arizona, meanwhile, it was okay. Could have been better. Could have been worse. I feel like I'm making way too many like tepid takes or like middle of the road takes, but it does feel like there's points for a lot of these teams. They play decently well at some points, but they also play really bad at other points. And the Cardinals, it's like, I mean, Jacoby Brissett threw for 317 yards and a touchdown. So it's like they do seem to play well offensively, and their defense has like plenty of talent and also plays well. They just always seem to like they're just not able to close out games or like really take that next step in games to like put away opponents, which I guess is restating what I just said before. Anyway, the Cardinals also didn't have a run game in this game. I think Bam Knight got injured, and it's like half the running back core is injured and the other half just is not performing well. So that can really limit an offense. And it's one where, I don't know, the Cardinals just weren't able to do enough. And it was especially in the later, like the fourth quarter and even the third quarter, the two teams were just trading the lead back and forth. And you were just kind of waiting for whichever team was going to make a mistake next. And they just like constantly made mistakes. In the end, Jacksonville will win in overtime and desperately needed, because Their division's getting real interesting real fast. Jags are 7-4, Colts 8-3, Texans 6-5. So all three of those teams are pretty close right now. And that division, there's no clear winner at this point. I mean, the Colts definitely have the inside track, but who knows at this point with how they're going. And Jacksonville really needed this win, even if it was a very, very ugly win. It's definitely needed for them to keep pace for the playoffs because they're still, right now, I think they're the 7th seed at the moment. Obviously, there's still five or 6 weeks left to go, depending on how you want to count it. But yeah, there's still plenty of time left to go, but it's one where for Jacksonville, you can't win them all like they did last week. But you take the wins where you can get them. So next up, going to be a pretty interesting game to talk about. The Cleveland Browns going into Las Vegas to take on the Raiders. This was Shedeur Sanders' first start, so my bold prediction in the AFC preview finally came to fruition, where Shedeur Sanders is starting a game. Unfortunately, it was due to Dylan Gabriel getting injured going into concussion protocol. But it's a start for Shedeur nonetheless, and he was decent in this game, I'd say. There's definitely some mistakes he made. Threw a pretty bad interception into like triple coverage, basically. But he also had some pretty good throws overall. Like he had a really nice long pass. He threw one touchdown in this game, his first ever touchdown on like a 67-yard check down, essentially. But it's one where the Shedeur Sanders discourse is now going into overdrive, and it is what it is. It's overall, for what I think of his performance, there's definitely room to improve, but he looks solid enough, and that's what you need for the Browns if you're looking at, your 5th round rookie quarterback, is to be solid enough, especially in your first start. Now, this is the caveat of playing the Raiders, and the Raiders are not a good team and have a pretty bad defense outside of Max Crosby, but it's still an NFL caliber defense, and one that Shedeur Sanders played better than he did worse, I'd say. The Browns defense, however, was the big story of this game because, oh my goodness, the Browns defense. The Browns defense sacked Geno Smith 10 times in this game. They sacked him, I believe, 6 times in the first half alone. Myles Garrett got another 3 sacks. He's now up to 18 on the season, 12 coming in the past, I believe, 3 games alone. So there's a good chance Myles Garrett breaks the all-time sack record for a single season, which is, I believe, 22.5, which is held by both Michael Strahan and TJ Watt. I know it's the two of them hold the record because Watt tied it a few years ago. I think it's 22.5, but I don't remember for sure. But it's one where Myles Garrett's getting close, and with how he's been playing over the past couple weeks, there's a good chance he breaks it. And it was just one where the Raiders could do nothing this whole game. Like Ashton Genty and the Raiders' run game was getting stuffed, and then their passing attack was having an even worse time. Once again, 10 sacks. Like Geno Smith was wanting to go back to Seattle at this rate because, oh my goodness, it was bad. It was like it was really bad for the Raiders. The Raiders have also since fired Chip Kelly as their offensive coordinator. They have promoted Greg Olsen, not the former Carolina Panthers tight end Greg Olsen because he's in the broadcast booth, but different Greg Olsen who has been with the Raiders for years. And there's a stat that came out where Olsen has been like promoted to interim offensive coordinator. This is like the 4th time that's happened in his Raiders tenure. It's like, because he's been with the Raiders for like 15 years, and with all the coaching turnover they have, it's like he just keeps getting re-promoted, and over the course of the season, it's he's back again, essentially. Guess who's back? Back again. Other than that, this was just one. Like, I don't think either of these teams are making the playoffs, but for the Browns, I mean, I think it's kind of what you want for Shedeur Sanders, is to look decent enough and to, grow, like build some improvements. And it's clear that like there's stuff to work with, and like it's like not even as a like mobile quarterback, like as a pocket passer, there's definitely a lot of stuff to work there or work with there for Shedeur. So I'm interested to see how this like back stretch of the season goes for Cleveland. And like if they stick with Shedeur or if when Dylan Gabriel comes back, they go back to him. I like I keep an eye on Cleveland just to see like how Shedeur Sanders plays. Cause I mean, like again, cause he has a ton of media attention on him, but like just as a quarterback, I'm curious to see how he develops in Cleveland. So next up, we're going to flip back over to the NFC in a divisional matchup between the Atlanta Falcons and the New Orleans Saints. And this one was pretty boring again, like some of the other games this week. There are some really good games, some boring games. This falls into the latter category. The Falcons won 24-10 in a game where pretty similar to the Browns, actually. Like not even just because of the same final score, but it's one where the pass rush and really the defense as a whole was the deciding factor. The Falcons defense was having a very strong performance in this game. Tyler Shuck was not having a good day. He threw an interception, got sacked a good bit. Kirk Cousins was solid. He threw 2 touchdowns in this game. And the Falcons end their losing streak, their 5-game losing streak, so they're 4-7 now. Bijan Robinson had a pretty solid game overall. The Falcons were definitely running him a lot more than it felt like they had in the past during that 5-game losing stretch. So you get your superstar running back going, good things happen. But it was just one where the Falcons defense just made the Saints offense obsolete, or I'd say more non-existent than obsolete, but you get the idea. The Falcons defense was the side that won this game more so than anything else. Pretty similar to the Browns defense in the Browns Raiders game. I don't think either of these teams are making the playoffs. I mean, the Saints are definitely not making the playoffs. They only have 2 wins in the season. I don't think the Falcons are making the playoffs just because of their massive skid they had, but I don't know. They make the Rams have a slightly worse draft pick because again they traded away that first round pick to the Rams to trade back into the first round to draft James Pierce Jr. And yeah, I mean there aren't too many more silver linings you can get for the Falcons, I think, this season, just because it's been that big losing stretch really took them out of contention, and also because Michael Penix is out for the year. It's not a good. You take the small wins where you can get them, and I think a division rivalry win, especially when you don't have a first round pick, that's the silver linings right there. And also the fact that the defense looks good when their pass rush can get going. Now, however, though, we get to the big game. Eagles-Cowboys in Dallas. Rematch of week 1. The Jalen Carter spitting incident that happened in that game. Philly won that game close. And the long-anticipated rematch. NFC East games, I always think, are some of the best, just period, because the rivalries are always the best rivalries in football. And Eagles-Cowboys is one of them. And to start, it looked like an Eagles rout. They scored 21 points on their first 3 drives, and it looked like everyone was expecting like the Eagles to run away with this, as some people were expecting. Though after that was a different story, because while the Cowboys' offense took a little bit to get going, both teams kind of almost did like a Freaky Friday swap, where after the first 3 drives netted touchdowns, the Eagles basically went nothing but punts, fumbles, or end of halves, essentially. The Eagles just constantly went 3-0. Their offense completely shut down. And the Cowboys just started to crawl back into this game. Saquon Barkley had a pretty bad game. The Eagles' offensive line, I should say, had a pretty bad game. Jalen Hurts had an okay-ish game. Really, the only guy on the Eagles' offense that had a good game was A.J. Brown, which is ironic given that, he's been complaining a lot this season about not getting the ball, despite the Eagles winning. And when the Eagles lose, because they lost 24-21, it was the one game where A.J. Brown actually got the ball a good amount of time. It's just ironic, I'd say. But this is another game where George Pickens had an insane game for the Cowboys. He had 146 yards and a touchdown. The Eagles also were dealing with multiple injuries in the secondary, mainly in safety, where I think both their starting safeties went down with injury in this game. And you could really tell it was starting to get to them because Dak, after the first couple drives, Dak really started to light things up, both to Pickens and also to a lesser extent CeeDee Lamb. CD same with the first game of the season against Philly, where he basically kind of redeveloped his the case of the drops. He had a couple bad drops in this game, but this time it did not cost the game for the Cowboys, since Dak just threw it to Pickens instead, basically. And I know there are a couple of questionable calls that went against the Eagles in this game. And I know Eagles fans are certainly complaining about that. However, the story of this for the Eagles is that their offense just completely shut down. It's like this whole year they just have not been running the ball with like design runs with Jalen Hurts all that much. And it's clear this offense is starting to get a bit one-dimensional because Saquon's not getting much traction this year. He's having a real down year so far. And the Cowboys defense, credit to them, they played a really good game after those first three drives. Like they just completely they just adapted to the Eagles. The Eagles game plan just seemed to be non-existent after those first couple drives. And outside of the occasional pass to AJ Brown, the Cowboys defense was just playing the Eagles better than the Eagles were playing the Cowboys. Eagles also fumbled the ball twice late in the game that really cost them, more so in terms of time rather than points, because I don't think the Cowboys actually converted points off of either of the turnovers. The first was a Saquon Barkley fumble, and the Cowboys wound up punting. But on that punt, the Eagles returners Xavier Gibson, who was on the Jets to start the season but got cut due to his ball security issues, fumbled again. And the Cowboys had it basically on the 10-yard line, but got stopped on a fourth down, I believe. They might have kicked a field goal. I don't remember exactly, but they didn't score a touchdown, TLDR. And the benefit, though, for the Cowboys was that it was in the fourth quarter and they're already leading. So that it burned like a good 2-3 minutes off the clock, and the Eagles just couldn't get it done in the end. Their offense just again completely shut down, and it was weird watching it because it was an Eagles offense that you just haven't seen in a good while. Like their run game was non-existent, and their pass protection was solid, and the passing attack was okay. Better, I'd say better than okay. It was overall pretty good, but they only gave up one sack, but it's a really critical sack where it was right before the 2-minute warning or something, very late in the game. It was a 3rd and 2, and the Eagles really need to convert it, or else it was basically game over. And Jalen Hurts took a sack on 3rd and 2. Or it might have been 4th and 2 either. It was very late in the game. It was a 2-yard situation, and the play call was pretty bad where basically all the Eagles receivers ran 2-yard comebackers, and none of them got any separation. And then Jalen Hurts just took a sack. He didn't even try to throw the ball. And it's not like he got blown up immediately. There are a good couple seconds before he got sacked, but he did. And it was, very big. So once again, credit Cowboys defense. They really rallied and put on a pretty, a heck of a good performance, I'd say. So Eagles, the flaws are starting to show in this Eagles team, especially on the offensive side of the ball, where they're starting to get one-dimensional again because their run game, they just are completely lacking the same explosiveness that they had last season. And I know they're dealing with some injuries on the offensive line. I think Lane Johnson was not playing in this game due to injury, but even still, it was not a good performance either way. So the Eagles are still 8-3, well within control of the NFC East. But if this Eagles team, the completely shut down after first couple drives Eagles team, and not do enough on defense to stay in it Eagles team continues to show up, there's a chance they could skid and lose the division crown to the Cowboys by season's end. I don't think it's going to happen because I think they've built up enough of a lead so far, and because I know the Eagles play the Commanders twice, and overall I think they have a pretty easy schedule going into this backstretch of the season. But I mean, I haven't been super confident on the Eagles for most of the year, partly because I'm a hater, but also because they clearly have flaws. And if those flaws keep surfacing, there's a chance, is all I'm saying. Now for the Sunday night game, it was not a very interesting game, to be honest. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers going into Los Angeles to take on the Rams. The Rams coming off a pretty huge win against Seattle last week, going up against another NFC divisional leader in the Buccaneers. And the Buccaneers have been dealing with a lot of injuries this season, especially on the offensive side of the ball, and it's really starting to catch up with them. Baker Mayfield got injured in this game. He's dealing with like a sprained labrum or something. I don't remember exactly. He's dealing with a shoulder injury of some sort that he suffered like in the second quarter of this game. And it looked to be a lot worse than it actually was. He looked to be in a lot of pain, but luckily it seems to be that he's only going to be out for a couple weeks at most, which is nice. But even by the time by halftime when it was clear he was starting to go out with injury, the game was basically over. The Rams defense put a stranglehold on this game early. They had I think a pick six, or it was either pick six or fumble recovery. Either way, it was a defensive touchdown for the Rams. And the Rams offense was doing its usual thing of being very good. Matthew Stafford, once again, is playing at an MVP level at this point. He has like 30 touchdowns to 2 interceptions in this season, which is kind of crazy. His connection with Devontae Adams in short yardage situations, especially in like goal to go situations, is a cheat code essentially. Like he just seems to find Devontae Adams open in like even the tightest of windows. It's very, very impressive. So the Rams won this game 34-7 in a game that was just never close. The Rams are 9-2, and as of this point, I think they're my favorite for honestly the Super Bowl. Because like compared to say the Colts or the Broncos or the Patriots over in the AFC, who have really good records, they don't have the experience that I think LA does, both more so in the player department rather than the coaching department. Because I know like Vrabel and Sean Payton especially have playoff experience. Sean Payton obviously has won a Super Bowl before, but the Rams, like they've won a Super Bowl recently. They won it back in 2021. Stafford won it with them. They have a lot of they have some of the same core. A lot of the same core went to the playoffs with them last year, and so like they have players that know what to do in the playoffs. And they're kind of playing better at this point than they were last season, I think. Like their last season, it was their defense was like really, really taken over, especially late in the season with a lot of their rookies. This season, their defense is still playing well, but their offense is like starting to match it, I think, because Matthew Stafford's just having an insane run at the moment. And having a healthy, largely healthy Puka Nacua, and then Devontae Adams has been incredibly good. So it's just, right now the Rams are my favorite just because they both sides of the ball are playing incredibly well. Now for the Monday night game, it is another NFC West versus NFC South matchup. The San Francisco 49ers playing host to the Carolina Panthers, and this was an interesting one because if the Panthers won this game, they would have actually taken sole possession of the NFC South, which would have been crazy. This was not the case, as the Panthers really wish they could just play Atlanta every week, because it seems like when they don't play Atlanta, they put up a performance like this, and more so a wet fart of a performance because, well, the Panthers defense was actually playing pretty well. They intercepted Brock Purdy 3 times in the first half. However, they only converted 3 points off of those 3 turnovers, which is not good. Bryce Young also threw multiple interceptions in this game, I believe. It was at least one, I think multiple. Let me just double check here. And yeah, he threw 2 interceptions. One of them was in the end zone. Purdy also threw an end zone interception, and it was just one where the Niners defense was just all over the Panthers in this game. Panthers just did put up a horrible offensive performance compared to the Niners. And even with the really bad start for the Niners, they were pretty much in control this whole game. And I'm honestly not sure who wins the NFC South at this point, just because the Bucs are so injured at the moment. But I just have zero confidence in the Panthers because, again, they put performances up like this. Like, they can play good games, but they also don't play good games at the same time. And it's clear the Panthers need more out of Bryce Young and more, period, before they can, call themselves a contender. Because going up against an injury-riddled Niners team, even if they have Brock Purdy back at this point, and putting up 9 points, three of them, only 3 points off 3 turnovers, is not good. Because they certainly had their opportunities to win this game, but in the end, they just could not capitalize whatsoever. So that does it for Week 12. Week 13 is going to be the big Thanksgiving one where you have 3 games on Thanksgiving. The Cowboys obviously always playing a Thanksgiving game, as well as the Lions always playing a Thanksgiving game. I believe there's a Black Friday game as well. I don't remember what it is, but I'm pretty sure there's a game on Friday. So it should always be a fun one. Thanksgiving week is always a fun week of football. As for me, tomorrow, ideally, I should have my first ever YouTube video up. It's going to be World of Warships gameplay edit style thing. If you've watched the YouTube channel Spookston, I've definitely taken a lot of inspiration from his types of videos there. And so I've been editing it a lot. I edited a ton yesterday. Should be done by tomorrow because I'm going to try and do like every Wednesday for that series. And so look out for that on my channel, which I've just added some new, like a channel banner and a channel icon for. So looking more like a proper YouTuber at this point. I got to say the classic, like, comment, subscribe, tagline, which is like, I said that I was like, oh yeah, I'm a YouTuber now. But anyway, that's that. I guess I'm going to try and do my Wacky Warships episode on Saturday. If I'm able to record that Saturday. I'm not sure if I'm doing stuff with like friends who are back for Thanksgiving. Not sure there. Just keep an eye out for that episode, potentially Saturday, maybe not. We'll see. Either way, definitely next episode for the podcast will be next Tuesday to recap Week 13 in the NFL. But very much keep an eye out tomorrow for my first ever proper YouTube episode. For now, though, thank you very much for listening. I have been Henry the Host.